Hey everyone, here's another episode of Find Your Film. This is these are good episodes because we do this twice a month. Every other week, one of us spotlights a filmmaker. We pick a filmmaker, and during that episode, we talk about a couple of their films or maybe their career or whatnot. Eric Holmes started off the boat with William Friedkin. Then Bruce Perky went into Dario Argento and Mario Bava. A couple of weeks back, I picked Joseph H. Lewis for the big combo, and So Dark the Night. So now we're going back to where it all began with Eric Holmes. Eric Holmes, what is this episode? Who did you decide to pick for this Director Spotlight episode?
Well, to say going back where it all began is very apropos because we're talking about Alice Guy-Blache. She was from France, and she was, for all intents and purposes, the first filmmaker of what we know today as film or movies. The Lumiere Brothers, obviously, they were the first ones out of the gate with, the moving pictures, if you will. And the Lumiere Brothers and, was it Gaumont? And
Gaumont, yeah.
At least Guy-Blache was with Gaumont, and they were kind of it was almost like a space race between the United States and the Russians of who's going to get the moving pictures out first, and the Lumiere Brothers came out first. But when they came out with the moving pictures, they had people walking, they had train moving around. They had water on the shore. But Alice Guy-Blache was the first one that actually, you know what? This moving picture thing's pretty cool. I bet you could tell a story with this. And then she came out with the what was the name of it? The Cabbage Fairy, which was the first in 1896.
Yeah.
And that was the first movie, and we talked about like the first feature-length movie in a previous episode. Was the story of the Kelly Gang. That was the first feature-length movie. But Alice Guy-Blache, and she's a very important figure, much like Mary Curie, where she wasn't the first female to win a Nobel Prize twice. She was the first person to win a Nobel Prize twice. Alice Guy-Blache wasn't the first woman to make a narrative feature. She was the first person to make a narrative feature. She was the first person to, granted, her methods were different than what happens now, but she was the first person to make a color film feature. She was the first person to develop technology to synchronize sound and video, which is why the color and sound synchronize comes to what you're watching right now.
I still can't sync video and audio. She did that over 100 years ago. Right?
Literally what we're doing right now. Think of the last movie you saw. Everything goes back to her, and she was somehow just lost through history. We watched. I guess we'll get into it, but we watched a documentary, which is what's probably going to be the focal point of a lot of this discussion. But
well, first of all, Eric, how did you hear about this? About her? The whole title of her being when you ask the question, who is the first female director? When you think of the first female director, I don't think a lot of people, and this documentary it's gonna talk about it. A lot of people did not know the answer, and when you mention the name, even today, Alice Guy-Blache, most cinephiles, I would say several weeks ago, I never knew Alice Guy-Blache from A Hole in the Wall. But how the heck did you come across her name and this project, this documentary, Be Natural: The Untold Story of Alice Guy-Blache? How did you come across that?
Well, it's kind of simple, actually, and kind of I guess, embarrassing to a point. But we did we've done 3 director spotlights,
Sure.
and of the 3 we mentioned, none of them are people of color, none of them are women. And I was like, let's try to at least get some female directors in there.
Okay.
And Catherine Bigelow's the obvious one people go to. I was like, that's too easy. And I thought,
Oh,
let's
listeners,
look
hold on.
up.
Before Eric goes on, I was bucking the trend, even though Bruce and Eric Holmes wanted more diversity in this program. Me being in the minority, I only wanted white male directors for the next 10 years to bump up our monetization skills. So I don't know if it was, should I, so I apologize for my own. No, but Eric,
Yes.
go ahead.
I'm the
Thank you, Eric.
asshole. Greg wanted to stick with the status quo, but
You and
unfortunately,
diversity, Eric. What are you doing, man? No, go ahead. Sorry. It's
but
amazing how you came across this. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, well, let's do a female director. But like everyone talks about Catherine Bigelow, and she's wonderful. And I take nothing away from Catherine Bigelow, but when you talk about female directors, she's the only one that comes up. And I'm like, and I was just thinking, well, who was the first one? And to my surprise, I found out that the first female director wasn't just, much like Mary Curie, wasn't just the first female director. She was the first director, full stop. Without Alice Guy-Blache, the Lumiere brothers keep filming water moving, keep filming trains pulling up to stations, keep filming like it's moving pictures, it's a novelty. And eventually what happens in novelties, they wear off and nothing happens with them. Alice Guy-Blache was the one that saw the potential in what this new technology did and brought it to a place that moved cinema forward in such a way that it is what it is today.
Yes.
The Avengers doesn't happen without her. Star Wars does not happen without her. Whatever independent movie you like doesn't happen without her. Cinema dies within a year or two if she does not push this into an art form, which is what it became.
Well, okay, that's very good, Eric, and you summed it up very well. I think probably we're gonna get to you, Bruce, in a second. I think with everything that she did during her 22 years of being a filmmaker, even today, if a woman or a man was doing what she was doing 120 years ago, even today, it would be considered like a huge feat. We're talking James Cameron-esque type, and we're going to get into what all of her accomplishments in a second, but it's amazing what she did during her career. It's criminal that her life story has been obscured by it. Has only come to light thanks to film historians and really passionate cinephiles and this director as well. But yeah, she did so many amazing things. Bruce, when Eric Holmes brought this to our plates, were you excited about this documentary? What did you get? What were your initial thoughts about Eric Holmes's choice, and then how did that change as you started getting into?
Well,
Elise Guy-Blache?
I was definitely excited because in the last few years, well, actually throughout my watching movies, but definitely in the last few years, I've been going back and forth and challenging myself to watch like some really old movies, like watch movies from that turn of the century era. And the fact that I'd never heard of her, just like we all talked about, just like pretty much everybody in the movie that we are going to talk about, made me excited to discover something I didn't know anything about. And as it went on, you feel more and more ashamed that you don't. And then eventually that
Yes.
changes to anger. And we'll talk, I think, a lot more about what really comes out of this movie other than just discovering the wonderful array of work that she does. There's a lot in here about just society and history and who writes the history. We'll get into that, I'm sure, because that's
the
a major
reason
piece
we
of this.
don't know about her, which
Yes.
is very
Now, okay, I'm circling this through my head, and you're talking about being angered and first of all maybe embarrassed, ashamed. I will just, full disclosure, folks, I am a media member. I've been a media member since 1991. My Gmail is filled with about 93 or 94,000. Check this out, Eric Holmes. We're talking about how sometimes you and I are a little bit stupid. I barely clean my Gmail box. So I have 93,000 things that I haven't read. Okay. And sometimes I open up certain things on a given day on people I want to interview. And when you mentioned Be Natural, the documentary, your first assignment to us was, hey, you know what? I want you guys to watch some of her work. But before you get to that, you said, here's a documentary, Be Natural, the untold story of Elise Guy-Blache. That was our first assignment. And we'll get to the documentary in a second. But after watching the documentary and loving it, I had this nightmarish thought that what if this director, Pamela B. Green, and her team pitched me? That would be horrible if it was in my inbox. But I'm saying, no, I'm a real journalist. I would not have overlooked this. This is the history of cinema. Find your film is what we're all about. Eric Holmes said that we should be a curation site. Bruce Perky, he wants to bring some added encyclopedic value to cinema. And I'm thinking, I'm part of this whole thing. And then I realized I had several emails from this whole team, the Be Natural team. I never opened their emails, like a complete idiot. And if it wasn't for, we're talking about synchronicity and all this stuff, if it wasn't for you, Eric Holmes, to actually dig and say to yourself, who's one of the first female filmmakers in cinema, or maybe the first, it just so happened that you found this documentary. And I just thought that was a really great coincidence. And if it actually wasn't for you digging this up, we would not be talking about it. So first of all, thank you so much. This is really what I think we all want this podcast to be. We spotlight filmmakers who should be spotlighted. This is perfect for what we're doing. Now, first off, I want to ask your initial reactions, Eric Holmes, the first time when you saw this documentary. You said you rented it on YouTube. Be Natural, again, Be Natural, the untold story of Elise Guy-Blache. Can you tell our listeners, first of all, what the moniker Be Natural is all about?
Well, Be Natural. Oh, hey. that breaks up a whole different can of worms. Be Natural, was in was it Solax?
Yes.
The Solax, and it was her what would you call it? Building studio.
I would say studio, right?
Building. I'm a fucking idiot.
No,
You know this by now.
Yeah.
Alice Guy-Blache created a studio called Solax, and back in the day, what did they say? The actors back then would just make sure you look at the camera and say your lines, and
Right.
this is another reason why Alice was so brilliant. She had giant signs that says "Be Natural" to remind the actors, don't just look at the camera and say the words, be natural.
Yeah,
If I'm reading these words, read them as if you're saying them for real to someone. And it really speaks to like the genius of, in that word gets thrown around a lot. Alice Guy-Blache was an absolute genius because she understood what this new technology meant and what it was capable of. And the whole idea of Be Natural was this shouldn't be like us videotaping people playing around. This should be us videotaping. There wasn't videotape back then. Filming,
shooting. Yeah.
I got real quick. I guess so. You said switching to videotape and movies as opposed to film because nothing's shot on film anymore. But
there's a lot of videotape in the documentary, though. There's a lot of digitizing and videotape in this documentary.
There is, but film is absolutely appropriate for talking about her because that's the birth of it. But the whole point of Be Natural is. This isn't supposed to be something that's fake. This should be as if we're taking account and filming something that's actually happening, but it's not. We're play acting, but be natural because maybe in your head it becomes real, like a play does.
Yeah.
I mean, she was definitely a Shakespeare of her time, and the whole idea of be natural is just one of many things that she brought towards cinema that is sounds simple now. I mean, of course, be natural. Oh, of course, color. Of course, sound. Well, not then, because back then they didn't know. Back then, it was just a thing that this is a novelty. But she saw something in it, and she nurtured that and brought it to a point to, to where they actually push her out later, and we'll get into that. But she brought it to a place that sustained to, we're talking about this, let's see, 60, 140 something years later.
Yeah.
So, however many hundred and something years
100, almost
later.
130. It's close to
130
Yeah.
years,
130. Yeah.
130 years later, dude, we're on a podcast on the internet talking about things that without her would not exist.
Can I
It's
add
just
to the be
mind-blowing to
natural
me.
thing really quick? I wanted to add on what you were saying. I think the one thing I would add on is that in a sense, I think she was smart enough to see that it wasn't stage acting. I think
Yeah.
that's what I think that was happening. She understood, she was smart enough to see that this is such a different medium that we can tell a story in a different way. And that is also shown in things like, in other words, you can capture more naturalistic expressions and emotions and emoting than people were used to seeing on stage, which was very big and broad, and everything back then was like you're playing to the seats in the back. But she understood that you don't have to do that with film. And she did also things, that's where she also understood things like you can use a close-up. Then they say she was the first person to use a close-up.
Yes.
You can use a
Yeah.
close-up to accentuate something. She also did dramatic editing, which had never been done before, where you can use editing to tell your story or to partially tell your story. So all of those are like her thinking on a whole other level about the ability of this medium than anybody else at the time. And like you're saying, the difference between just kind of documentary shots and narrative storytelling, but she was doing more than that. She wasn't just saying like, oh, I could film a play. She was actually understanding how she could manipulate and use the medium to tell a story within that medium in a different way that's specifically designed with film. And I think that's what's super impressive.
Now, on the base level, if you are not into film history, if you could care less about who's the first female director ever in cinema,
couldn't care less.
if you couldn't care less, if you don't give a what, I'm going to say this. As a pure bare bones documentary, Be Natural, the untold story of Elise Guy-Blache works because of the way it's shot. The movie is framed as a big sort of a detective story because we learn a little bit, we learn about her successes, and then we start wondering, with all those 22 years of success, she had her own studio, like Eric, you were saying with Solax. What happened? How come she fell off the face of the earth after a certain point when it came to the film industry? And the director, Pamela B. Green, she does a good job at hunting down so many different family members and friends or descendants of Elise, and we get to see different photographs. It feels like we're actually on a little bit of a investigation to uncover all the lost pieces and chapters of her life. And I thought, even if you're not really into this from a cinephile level, just basically as a documentary, it absolutely worked for me. Even if you don't care about all the filmic history of it. And what did you think, Bruce, as far as a documentary? Did it work for you?
Yes, for exactly the reasons you're talking about, where they set it up like you said at the beginning, like, hey, do any of you know who this is? Look how important she is. Now step back. Why doesn't anyone know about her? And then you start kind of from the beginning and you follow through. And when you hit the gaps, that's when they try to say, like, well, why don't we know what happened? And they try to follow these points. And it even does the kind of the tropey, like Indiana Jones, where you like follow the line on the map and then follow the line on the map. But that's super effective. That keeps you in the narrative of what we're trying to discover about her. And I just want to say, and you'll go further with it. But little things that really impressed me and impacted me were things like you're finding out about her and how important she was and all this stuff. And then you just find a pile of her stuff in a box in a garage in, where was it? Like Arizona or New Mexico.
Yeah.
And they just start pulling things out and you're like, holy shit. And those kind of contexts just really give it kind of a sadness and a just kind of a pertinence to like life in general, and how something so important can be lost so quickly. And it kind of really helps accentuate the importance of saving things for posterity, like, preserving.
I understand the sadness portion of that, but that part kind of gives me a little bit of hope and excitement,
but
because
only because they were lucky enough.
think of I'm not too much of a hoarder, but think of all the stuff you have just kind of buried in that you kind of don't think about, like it's not that important. And we're all into film, so the person that had all this stuff in a box, they're not a big film nerd. It was just stuff they had in a box. It didn't mean anything to them. But think of all the stuff you might have just kind of tucked away somewhere. And by the way, if you're a hoarder, stop listening now, because this is not going to help you out. But it's always neat to the idea that you have this treasure. You might have this treasure trove. And again, if you're a hoarder, please throw away your trash and stop listening. But the idea that you would have this treasure trove that you have no idea what it means in just what it means for culture. The fact that we don't know who Alice Guy-Blache is, had someone not looked into it, had someone not found this treasure trove, had, so on and so forth, someone didn't collect this thing, that's a part of film history that's just gone. Not only is it gone, but as you watch the documentary, it was flat out rewritten and lied about, to the point where they were giving other people credit for Alice Guy-Blache's movies.
Yep.
Now, in a separate universe, Eric Holmes, I'm gonna throw you a softball right now, but in a separate universe, Alice Guy-Blache and her husband, right? They're working together in Solax, and he has his own studio as well. So they're making films in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Do you think if Thomas Edison wasn't a player in the film industry, do you think Alice Guy-Blache would have continued to thrive as a head of a movie studio, her own movie studio in Fort Lee, New Jersey? What do you think? Or do you think Edison did the right thing?
You're poking the bear. Thomas Edison, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy hard. I wish he would have died in a fucking gangbang. Everything. I remember going to his school and we hear about Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Edison invented this, and you get a little, well, he didn't invent that, but he pushed that along. And then you get older, and then you learn, well, actually, he was just he just had a lot of money, he made this thing, and the Tesla. And wait, what, Tesla? And by the way, we're not talking about the new movie with with Ethan Hawke. Love Ethan Hawke, and I don't want to shit on that movie. Whatever. But point being is, they start learning about Tesla, and it's like, well, who's this Tesla guy? Well, he invented this, and this. And like, well, that's cool. How come we don't have that? Well, because, he didn't have the money. Thomas Edison fucked them over. And the world we live in now, had Thomas Edison died of cancer at 3 years old, our world now would have been a better place. I firmly believe this, because every story I ever hear of Tesla, none of it has anything to do with progression. It all has to do with him trying to make a buck off of someone else's invention. And granted, hey, Thomas Edison found this invention and spent money on it and brought it out there. Oh, Thomas Edison bought this patent and put it out there. But what happens when he does that is he puts his feet down on the faces of other people trying to progress, because it doesn't fit what he wants. It doesn't make sense with him trying to build his wealth. And Thomas Edison was a cancer on their history, and I wish he wasn't in there. And granted, some people wouldn't be, their inventions wouldn't be there without Thomas Edison.
Sure.
But as Malcolm says in Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
Yeah.
The cream would have risen to the top had Thomas Edison not had his boot on its face, pushing it back to the bottom. And that's exactly, and within the documentary, that's exactly what happened with Alice Guy-Blache. The reason we don't know about her is because of, and I don't remember the ins and outs of it, but the monopoly that that Thomas Edison did with the camera in the film. He didn't give a fuck about art.
Yeah.
He didn't give a fuck about progression. He gave a fuck about a buck. And because of that, the woman that created this thing that we love and that we talk about every week is unknown to us up until a week or two ago because of Thomas Edison. And fuck him. Go fuck yourself, Thomas Edison. I wish you were dead. Well, you are dead. I wish you would have died soon.
Bruce, if I say he's not such a bad guy, do I get $20 off my utilities bill next month? I don't know if that'd help because I'm all about capitalism. But no, in all seriousness, within the documentary, it's basically saying if you don't sign under this whole umbrella of Edison and his cameras and everything like that, and move out west with he and everyone else, then you're in deep, you know what? So I'm assuming she didn't have the funds to move out west. She didn't move out west. She stayed in New Jersey,
she moved back to France, actually.
Yeah,
France,
her and
that was right
Blache
before the
split up and all that.
Yeah, and then she lived the rest of her life with her daughter, which is documented. I think, first of all, Bruce, do you think this documentary can be turned? Well, the life of Alice Guy-Blache. When I'm thinking about this movie, I'm thinking this could be a miniseries. I'm thinking this could be a movie. This should be a movie based on her life. There's so much stuff you can do with her life story.
Absolutely, yeah.
So long as she doesn't sing "Tears for Fears" at the end.
Yeah, no, right.
Folks, that's a Tesla reference. Okay, so that's
all right. I'm done shitting on Tesla.
Okay. So, but Bruce, this Elise's life as cinema, as a movie miniseries, do you see that as a home run as far as they should make a movie about her life?
Absolutely. It's compelling. If you're into movies, I mean, it's spectacular. But even if you're not, even if you're just a fan of history and learning about things you don't know about, learning about how history is written, learning about all the changes that happen in society, because I mean, really, the things that happen to her also mirror what's happening in society, you know, as far as like, you know, the rise of all the industry and creativity and technology. And then all of a sudden, and they kind of walk all through this, you know, how it hits. And then all of a sudden you have the depression and on and so forth. So, and how she's kind of edged out. Well, first of all, like you said, she's edged out by the whole monopoly that Edison has. But then even past that, she's edged out by just the corporatization or the kind of the big business version of Hollywood land / films. You know, all of a sudden they're not made by these small private companies. They're run by these giant studios. And once that happens, there's no chance for her.
The documentary also covers, which is a huge sin, is her being left out of various movie books and record books regarding her. You know, she's basically running her own studio. She's directing so many films. She's a producer, and it really leaves out so much stuff. And she spends the rest of her life trying, I'm not going to say clear her name, but to show, hey, this is, I was one of the main pioneers of cinema. And she had to really...
Well, I didn't get that sense. I got the sense that other people were trying to bring... I got the sense that she just gave up on it. She's like, that's something I did back then, and no one cares, and fuck it, I'm not going to waste any more energy on it.
I mean, I think towards the end of her life, she tried to get her memoirs sold. She wrote her memoirs.
Well, after it kind of came back around. But I think I got the sense that she resigned to the fact that no one cares. Who cares? I don't care. You don't care. No one cares, and whatever. And she was really, at least in the interview they had with her in the
63,
60s,
60s, like 63,
wherever that interview that they had taped with her, I got the sense that she was just real humble and she was kind of over it. Like at the beginning of the interview, it's like, it's what happens. I'm living my life now, and then and then she got the sense that someone was interested. And it's like, oh, my movies are out there. Oh, hey, wow, that's cool. Well, let's find them. You know.
Yeah, let's find. Yeah, she spent.
And so it kind of lit a spark in her towards the end. But yeah, I don't suspect that she was trying to make her name known. I think she was pretty, and it's sad that it had to come to this, but I suspect that it was she was resigned to the fact that, well, I did this thing, no one cares, and life goes on. I'm just gonna have to move on.
Didn't you also feel like, I mean, I think there was a two-part thing, like the one thing you're talking about where she started kind of like wanting to find the movies again, like find where they had, because she didn't have any copies. But also I think the piece where Gaumont started doing their own little history, they started writing up their history, and she wasn't in it. And the other people were attributed to her movies. I think that really bothered her, and she was even giving her edited notes to them, and they were like, "Oh, well, that'll be the next edition," and so on and so forth, kind of playing her off. And then I think, tell me if you guys agree with this. I think what bugged her even more is that she was credited with a movie that she didn't make, that she didn't like.
Yes,
and I think that chapter hide more than anything.
Yeah. That's not my movie. What are you talking? That's not my movie.
She was pissed by that. I think that's what kind of sparked another fire under her butt. You know, it was like, well, you can like forget all my movies, but don't tell me I made that damn movie. It was like, you know.
Well, yeah, I can't remember what movie it was, but it was so and so directed this movie. It's like, no, he didn't. He was my assistant.
Yeah.
like he was the guy. He was the guy we got running donuts. Said, wait, you say he was the one that made it? That was my movie. And then, then you get kind of the, I don't want to say anger, but there was a little bit of.
Just give her credit, you know, like just give her credit for what she did. She doesn't need an award, you know?
Yeah. She only invented cinema as we know it today. She only invented color in cinema. She only helped invent sound in cinema. She only invented narrative storytelling. She only invented there has to be. We talked in the past about like Evil Dead inventing these things, and even further back, Citizen Kane. Those two pale in comparison of what she did. It's
like saying they invented the headlight, whereas she invented the freaking car. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it's like they invented the headlight. She invented electricity.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? What's so funny? In the documentary, what really blew my mind, they were saying like D.W. Griffith, he started his career in 1908, and I'm thinking, she started making stuff in 1896, so she was ahead of Griffith, D.W. Griffith, and also Sergei Eisenstein. Eisenstein was
inspired by her.
Yeah, inspired by Eisenstein. Battleship Potemkin. Eisenstein was inspired by her. Alfred Hitchcock was inspired by her. So she inspired the directors that inspired us. So it's inspired the cinema. So
they also showed that graphic where they showed all of the giants of that time, and she made more movies than any of them.
Yeah, it was like
Méliès and all those guys. What was that?
Here's something else to consider. We just found out about her, and the only reason anyone knows about her today is by pure luck. Like the whole, at least according to the documentary, the whole reason her name ever came out was just a perfect storm came together. Someone found it and then brought it out there, and then now three guys are talking about it on a podcast, and I'm sure there's a couple more too. Someone made it, her name's not nearly as big as it should be. But the point is, and the point I'm kind of needling at is that the only reason we know about her is by pure luck. Imagine, and not just in film, imagine how many pioneers have been pushed, just kind of pushed aside, and we don't know about them, or history has been changed because that perfect storm didn't happen for them.
Yes.
That perfect storm happened for at least Guy-Blache, and I'm glad it did. But other perfect storms have not happened for other ghosts of history that we will never know about.
Bruce, how much you want to make a bet that Eric Holmes within the next several weeks just goes out and just tries to find some of these voices in cinema?
Probably.
You want to bet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Safe bet. Is that a safe bet right there?
I think it's a pretty safe bet.
I think
this is where, I would get political, because I mean, we're talking about right now in history and what's happening right now in history. And I mean, you guys can just step away from it if you want. But I mean, people are yelling and throwing their hands up in the air because they're saying like, history is being lost. You're taking down my, my Confederate statue. And I live in a fucking city that has a Confederate statue. So I'm going to talk from where I come from. And they're saying like, you're going to erase history. And I'm like, fuck you. History has been erased, and it's been erased for all these other people. This is a perfect example of somebody whose history was erased, and luckily it was captured back to her in the tiniest
like
way.
The skin of its teeth.
Yeah. And even then,
it cannot be overstated how close she was to being erased.
And she's still sort of still erased. I mean, she's not like common knowledge to most people, and she's not even taught that much. So it's going to take a lot to pull her back, but she's considerably pulled back more than, like you said, than the innumerable nameless people in history that are never going to be heard about. So when I hear people like pissing and moaning that their history is being erased, I'm like, no. You've done the erasing.
Yep.
Buck up. Here, I'm going to say buck up again. I did it last week. I'm saying it again.
Buck up.
Buck up, and let's actually find the real lost, hidden history. And I mean, that's the way I felt when I was watching this. That's what made me so angry.
I don't want to get off on a tangent.
No, well, I started it.
We're on the tangent. The same people that said, I don't want to erase history. That's my Confederate pride. It's like, are the same people that say slavery wasn't about slavery. It was about, it's like, okay. Okay, but it's you know where I'm going.
It's just the comment.
The people that are so into history like to conveniently forget history.
Well, it's the common psychological thing, right? The people who complain the most about something are usually the ones that are perpetrating it. Yeah, so pick the thing that someone's getting really loud about, whether it be a preacher that's complaining about homosexuality. Guess what? He probably is. I'm going to stop. I'm going to get really bad. But,
but you know what? Regarding
this is about Elise Guy-Blache. We don't need to taint her with the names that we will not speak on this podcast.
We'll stop there. But I'm saying that this is the kind of important stuff that comes out of this movie. It's a movie that you wouldn't think would do that, but it does.
It is such a great documentary. You know, credit goes to Pamela B. Green. I was listening to a couple of podcasts with her on as an interviewee. She works in the industry as she does she's a titleist, like the opening titles of a movie, and she supervises that. She makes money. You know, you can see that with it's the graphic.
Wait, she was a titleist?
Yeah, titleist.
Something else a little someone we're talking about invented.
Right.
Elise Guy-Blache made her own titles.
Oh, right. And then also she's a graphic designer, Pamela B. Green. So she was talking about how I think it took her almost 10 years, at least 5 to 10 years. Hopefully, maybe I'll ask to do an interview with her, but it took her a long time. This was a labor of love. She was making money in the business. She poured her own money into this documentary. She tried a Kickstarter for this as well. And this is one of those movies where she was saying that she was actually thinking while making this movie, there were a lot of times when she really just wanted to give up. And if it wasn't for the support of other female filmmakers and producers to help give her support along the way. By the way, this documentary is narrated by Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster is an executive producer of this project. There were a lot of times when she could have just given up, but thank goodness that she didn't. And this is a worthwhile documentary just to watch on a film history level, just to know your history. Number 2, on a cinephile level. And 3, as we've always talked about, entertainment. This is just an entertaining documentary for me. So, love it.
And on top of that, like to your point about her trying to get the documentary made, first of all, kudos to her for doing that, because as a film fan, I cannot think of anything more important. I can think of more important things, obviously, cure for cancer, but as within the context of film, I cannot think of anything more important than bringing her story out and exposing the world to who Elise Guy-Blache is. But like to her trying to get this story out, I could see where that sounds like homework. I could see where watching this Old silent film. Don't care. I get why this sounds like homework, but you watch the documentary, and um, it, oh, it just if you watch it and you're anything like me, and I'm guessing you guys too, it just makes you excited of the discovery of, oh my God, I didn't know this person existed. Oh wow, they did that. They did that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you find out why she got the boot on her face and got pushed away. And now you're angry about everything. Or at least I
Yeah.
was. And yeah, I'm glad she got it made. But I could see where a pitch of this would be, it sounds like homework, I guess, but it is
Yeah.
absolutely not. It's a wonderful documentary, and I'm glad it exists. And
By
I'm
the
glad
way,
it was one more thing that helped get her name out there.
another thing that makes me mad, this subject matter should be funded, right?
Yes,
How come they did
yes,
not throw money? How come this director does not have a
yes.
ton of money at her wherever she lives and is funded by some corporation or studio
Yeah,
to say, hey,
it's,
this is it.
it's textbook irony.
And
Yeah,
that's the other thing we didn't
yeah,
bring up. So talk about funding, right? So the other thing we didn't talk about is that the idea of how this gets lost because of just there's these vast archives of the films themselves.
oh, nitrate. Yeah,
Yeah, that are just slowly being destroyed. And I think
you're right.
Scorsese's really big about trying to preserve those. But the fact that people are like, they're probably in there, but no one's looked. We don't know where to look.
Yeah.
So that was another big aspect of it. It's like, they're there. You just have to like, who knows what else is stuck in there? Like they just have to go look.
To your point,
I wonder how many of like, because here's the thing: if I had like all these film canisters, and I had the technology, which they clearly do, to turn the film into digital, film, digital, whichever
Right.
is your favorite, doesn't matter. We're talking about curation, so fuck it. We're gonna put it on digital. Just deal with it before it just deteriorates into nothing. But I don't understand why they don't, and maybe they do. Maybe there's a process for this. I don't understand why they just don't digitize all of that and put it on YouTube or put it on Vimeo or make a website and put it on the website, because I get that they have the film canisters, the physical things.
sure.
What happens if a meteor hits? What happens if that place goes up in flames? Like
Yeah.
Universal
and,
Studios.
and,
Remember that fire? Remember
Yeah.
the fire several years ago? Yeah.
and again, I'm speaking out of complete ignorance. Maybe they already do this and they're watching this and go, "Shut the fuck up, Eric. We already did. Go, do your homework."
I think they're
Maybe
trying to, but I think to Greg's point, they got to have the money to have people do it.
Yeah. I think
Call-
Kino Lober.
hamslime@gmail.com. I have a computer. Send it to me. I will do it for you.
That's so funny. Yeah, you can reach for more information. Go to benaturalthemovie.com. I'll have the website on our show notes and everything. Just again, this documentary is worth it just as an entertainment value. Most importantly, it's worth it. And for educational value, it's definitely worth it as well. Eric Holmes and Bruce Perky, they rented it on YouTube. So I'm sure it's on demand. You can rent it via YouTube. I was very lucky to see it for free on Canopy, Kanopy, Canopy.
Library
But
curated it for you.
But you know what? I think, on benaturalthemovie.com, as far as support, Eric Holmes, I don't know, this might be an idea. They have a PayPal button on their website. I might donate as well. I really,
Yeah,
really,
I'm
I'm
down.
such a, yeah. So
I'm
we
in.
got to, I really want to shout to the high heavens about this movie, how much I love the documentary, and that there's so many layers to really enjoy it. Now, the final layer for this episode is Bruce Perky and Eric Holmes. They watched a bunch of Elise Guy-Blache's films on YouTube, and would love to hear you guys just chime in on the shorts that you saw, films that you saw from
Well, I think
Elise.
Eric saw more than I did. So I could talk about some of the ones I did, and he can just add more onto it
Okay.
if
Yeah.
you'd like. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I guess we should probably start with the cabbage fairy.
Sure.
And that's the movie that started everything. And it was really simple. It's about a minute long. And I should mention that there are a few of her movies on YouTube. They're about a minute, somewhere 4 minutes, somewhere. There's one that I haven't watched yet, the Passion, that's about half hour long. and I'll probably watch that. We'll talk about that next week on the regular show. I'm sure I'll watch
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But yeah, they're the ones that are there. They're they're old movies. They came like the Cabbage Fairy came out in 1896. 1896. This movie came out in 1896, so
Exactly.
you gotta and it was just this fairy walking around in this cabbage patch pulling babies out of a cabbage patch. I wonder where we've heard that before.
Right. Yeah. My goodness, right? Licensing on that. Come on,
um
right? That's $1 billion
but
business, right?
yeah, so she's pulling all these Cabbage Patch Kids out, which turned into Garbage Pail Kids, which turned into Bill and Ted, which we talked about. Like,
A
yeah.
lot of
Anyway,
connections there.
but yeah, like it had a really good set design before they even knew what set design was. It had a story before they even knew what story was, and it was real simple, only a minute long. Just fairy going around picking up babies, and all right,
Putting them on the ground. What is that? I mean,
I would say
I know.
dropping them on the ground. Actually,
Babies, babies
I'm
get
gonna
a
be
little bit
PC.
scary in these movies.
Gently putting them down on the ground.
if you
Maybe.
say so. If you say so. It's like, oh, here's a baby. Oh, here's no.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
He
know what? It
doesn't
was
throw 'em on the
even
ground,
though
but-
it's 1 minute, it's still interesting to watch. It's a lot more interesting to watch than a lot
for
of
sure.
minute clips that we see today. On
Yeah,
any
she
of
had the one called I'm gonna forget the name of all these.
a sticky woman.
What?
We were talking about a sticky woman since
No,
I'm the big,
the dance one. And there's two of them. There's a video where they kind of mesh two of them together. But it's
Oh,
one of
yeah.
her it's one of her colorized ones where
Yeah.
she hand colored the frames.
Pirette's escapades when they're dancing.
Yeah, there you go. And then there was another one before that. At least the video I saw were both those pushed together. But yeah, I mean it's really basically it's imagine taking a black and white film and going in with highlighter, coloring it in. That's kind of what it was. But it looked really pretty. And it was just kind of, and I got kind of a lesbian vibe from it, which I didn't grow up then, but you hear things, maybe that was a little risque for the time.
Oh, speaking of
Right.
which, we even forgot to talk about how with a lot of her films, at least she actually switched sort of gender roles. That sometimes the male
Yeah.
characters would
Yeah,
be
the
right. Bruce,
consequence of feminism. That one was a big one.
yeah, I
Where
mean,
and that was really interesting because that's the one that actually Eisenstein mentioned and actually supposedly kind of influenced Potemkin because there's the whole baby carriage scene in that one. There is also another one we're going to talk about. But yeah, like you're saying, so what's really interesting in that one too, and she does it in a bunch of them, but she switches the gender roles. She doesn't switch their clothing, so they still have the traditional clothing, but she has them acting out the roles of the opposite gender, which is super interesting and weird. And obviously at the time, I mean, what was that? That was probably really strange and daring because it was really challenging kind of the status quo of gender norms. So
Yeah. They had another one, and again, I'm forgetting all the titles.
what about the first all black cast for one
Mhm.
of one of
Well,
her films?
Let me get to this one before we go there, because
Okay.
this one's kind of weird. It was one of her first sound ones, the ones that she
Synced?
synchronized the sound.
Yeah.
So what they would do, at least to my understanding, and again, I'm wrong often, and probably wrong here. And even if I was right based on the documentary, what's most important is I wasn't in history, so maybe what I think I know never actually happened. Never know. But point
Fair
being,
enough.
as I understand it today, they record a song and then they play the song so someone can lip sync to the song as they're videotaping it, and the sound and the audio are synchronized. So then when they play it later, they play the video or they play the film as they're playing the sound, and when they're talking, everything's synchronized. And so they have this song, and it's in French, so I don't know what the lyrics are, but, and this is going to hurt me to say this, it seems really it comes off as really racist towards Asians. They sing about jujitsu, and it comes off really.
Hold on one
Yes,
second.
yes.
We're doing a podcast right now, Claire. Can I call you in a second? In a little bit, okay? I love you. Okay. I'll see you. I'll see you in a bit. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric. Keep talking.
But
Bye bye. Sorry. She said, Tito, wait. I feel so bad.
That particular one comes off as really racist towards Asians, and I don't know what the lyrics are because I don't speak French. In one of the YouTube videos, someone put the translated lyrics out, and I think he was playing the actor was playing a racist towards Asian people, making fun of them, and then his girlfriend leaves him for an Asian person. So, haha. You got yours. Could be problematic by today's standards, but yeah, we can go in with the other one.
But over 100 years ago, you got to go say time and place. And
the weird thing is, I don't think the joke was haha Asians suck. I think the joke was the character was like haha Asians suck, and he got his because his wife ended up leaving him for an Asian. And if that's the case, and again, I don't speak French, so I don't know, but if that's the case, that's pretty progressive. Basically giving a racist their just desserts, ironically speaking. So
cool. And they talk about in the movie also that, like, and I think I saw this in the clips, the ones that I saw, that she really would put women either forward or pretty equally balanced in a lot of the different movies she made too, like way more than you would have seen. Not just the gender role switches, but also just the main character a lot of times was a woman, or equally, like there was a couple where she's, where it wouldn't have usually been a woman doing it, and she just had a woman doing it. So, and that was cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were talking about how, there's that off-quoted thing, and Martin Scorsese's in it for about 10 seconds, and he was talking about how poetic she was visually, and you look at her stuff, it's obviously silence, a lot of silence. The one without the sync sound has to be all about moving pictures, and he was basically referencing how her visual language increased over the years, got even better. So I'm looking right now as we're talking about this 1916 short, The Ocean Wave. Don't have any of the subtitles right now. Looks very pretty. Not in the best condition, but she definitely knew her way around a camera, so.
Can we talk about I got two favorites of the ones I seen her. One of hers made me laugh a lot, and that's with the dog and the sausage.
Yes. Let's talk about it.
Okay,
what's the name of the short?
A Race for the Sausage.
A race for the sausage, 1907.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
Right. But I want to get to another one after that. This a little different genre, we'll say, because she invented genres. No, I don't think she invented genres, but within film she did. But A Race for a Sausage is a dog that grabs a sausage link.
Yep, a long sausage link. It's like long.
Uncoils, and it's this long thing, and the guy, the butcher or whatever is like, "Chase, you crazy dog, come back with my sausage." Then the dog runs past someone else and like knocks over some shit, and they're like, "You crazy dog!" And then the butcher bumps into, "Oh, you too? All right." So now the butcher and someone else run after the dog. Then the dog, the dog just keeps running past people, disrupting their lives, and more people are chasing the dog. Even at one point, a woman
with a stroller.
This poor baby.
Yes,
poor baby.
He's pushing a
stroller.
Walks
by with the stroller. The dog runs by. It's like, and then all this mob. At this point, it's just a complete mob that's chasing this dog, and they knock over the stroller like 2 or 3 times.
Well, yeah, one time it goes flying down a hill. One time, and then there's the scene where the whole crowd is running in front of a moving train.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm watching it right now. It's very
and I had to rewind that part because I was like,
it runs over the stroller.
No, you go back. She pulled the baby out just in time.
Oh, okay.
And then I went back and was like, holy shit, they did that stunt with the baby there.
So
real quick. So, oh my God, they did that stunt with the baby there. I rewound it again. It's just a doll. Yeah, and then I was like, oh, thank God it's not a real baby. They didn't do that stunt with the real baby with the train. wait a second. They did that stunt with a real train.
Yeah, they did.
And so I went from worried about the baby to watching it again. Okay, the baby's dead or the baby's alive. To, oh, it wasn't a real baby. To,
All
holy
those people are
shit,
real.
that was a fantastic stunt they just pulled off.
Wow. No, this is amazing.
So
Just
one
to
other thing I
watch.
want to mention about this short, do you not think that this directly influenced the scene in Raising Arizona,
I don't remember
the
raising. I
huggy
haven't-
scene,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
right? Because there's that huggy scene where he's running and then all the dogs start chasing them. And then
Yeah.
it's like people and dogs and everybody are chasing them. And there's a scene in that Raising Arizona scene where they go through a person's house. And that exactly happens.
Yeah.
Short.
All right. Yeah, I could see that.
Can I tell you? I'm watching it right now. Right now, this sequence would be an ambitious sequence
Yeah.
Yeah.
cinematically.
Have
This would
you
be
got to
tough to
the
mount.
train part yet?
The race for the sausage. I mean, this would be. I'm watching it right now.
Yeah.
It's-
Did you get to the train part yet? Though?
Not even. I'm not to the train part yet because it's four
Wait
minutes
till
and
you get to
10
the train
seconds.
part. It's awesome.
And because it doesn't even seem that's the thing. Like, cinema has progressed so much that we don't even think of it. But then now you got to consider back in the day with the limited technology and tools they had.
Yeah.
That train sequence, that's a flat out action sequence.
Well, I'm not
train's an
even to
action
the.
sequence.
Yeah, I'm not
sequence.
even to the train yet, but
It's
just even
just-
the production design, all the items that they had,
Yes.
just the
It's
plan.
just-
Baby or not,
entertaining.
yeah. Baby or not, that train sequence is dangerous for the actors involved, and they, it's on the level of fuck, I can't remember his name. The fucking
Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's on.
Oh,
some,
that
like,
yeah.
Buster Keaton level
Listeners, I'm
stuff.
looking at the train sequence. There's a whole crowd. There's a stroller. It looks that's a split step. That is very dangerous.
Yes.
Wow, amazing. Can you imagine? You're supposed to get that only if you don't get it right, someone dies.
Yeah, someone falls over, stumbles, dead.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
So
goodness.
one other thing I want to mention, I love this movie, this short that she has. I mean, it starts with a title card of just the dog staring at you, which is just beautiful. I mean, just that alone. She didn't. Can you think of any other silent film where you've seen, short movie or anything, where it just starts with something that graphically, it just tells you the story.
It's
This is
beautiful.
just a beautiful short. It's so fun. All right, what was the other one, Eric, that you loved?
The other one, and I do remember the name of this, Falling Leaves.
Yes.
The one about so I'm assuming if you're listening to this, I said Falling Leaves, and you already know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have not seen it, I will just spoil everything for you. It's like, what is it, like 4 or 5 minutes long?
A little longer, maybe like 11 maybe minutes. It's not very
Maybe.
long.
It's 11
though.
minutes, close
But-
to 12 minutes.
Okay, so the whole point is that parents are calling the doctor because their daughter's sick. They have 2 daughters. They have an older daughter and a younger daughter, and the older daughter's sick, and they call the doctor over, and they chase the younger daughter off, but she's still kind of listening on the conversation, and the doctor says to the mom, "It's like, it's not looking good. By the time the last leaf on the trees fall, your daughter is going to be dead." And the younger daughter hears this, and she goes to bed. She goes to her bedroom at night after everyone's like, everyone's sad to hear the story, and they all go to bed. And the youngest daughter, she wakes up and she decides to get a roll of yarn and says, "I'm going to tie the leaves to the tree to make sure that no leaves fall and that my sister gets to live." And it's like such a
Beautiful.
Talk about it. It's such a sweet story. So that I won't say any more of the story. You can watch the rest of it because it's only 11 minutes. But it's such a simple story and so beautifully told. And I mean, dude, how's that not just break your heart?
And that's logical for child's reasoning. And I want to mention there is a gorgeous shot where you're inside the house and they have the French doors, and they open up to the yard, and the leaves are falling, and there's the trees and the garden beyond, and she walks through there to go tie up the leaves, and that shot is beautiful. Like beautiful now, 125 years or whatever. That was made in 1900. I wrote it down. It was made in 1912.
1912, yeah.
So over 100 years ago that was made. And this goes to show she was using film language already at a super high level. Super high level. So it's impressive. Also, if you like the Race for the Sausage, I would also suggest, if that kind of like really active humor, she could do that, obviously really well. The Drunken Mattress is a really good one too.
Oh, right. They mentioned that in the documentary, The Drunken Match.
I have an idea how they did that, but I was watching that, and just from a special effects standpoint, I was trying to think how I don't get it. Like I get the story, but like from a special effects, like how did they do that?
It's good.
I think I might have an idea of how they did like some of those shots, and but yeah, that's a great, fantastic example of early special effects done very well.
And once again, that has a shot in it. I mean, it's really fun and active, like the sausage one is. The sausage one's even better though. But I mean, it's really active and fun like that. But it also has a shot that's not an active shot that's really super impressive and weird for its time. And that's the shot where you have the bed out in the kind of the field, and the woman's been repairing this mattress, right? So it's not fully like stuffed. And then the woman walks away, and you see in the distance the homeless dude walking, the drunken kind of homeless guy or whatever, walking towards it. And he's really far in the distance. And that's a kind of shot that you just really don't see much back then, where you have this, this set piece in the foreground in an actual natural setting, not a stage, and he's just way in the distance walking towards it, and it's just telling you the story visually. It's really interesting. It holds on it for a while, and I loved that shot too, which once again, it could have been done in a much shorter, less interesting way, but she was looking at it with this kind of this depth and this dramatic focus to really set the scene for you, so that when all that slapstick stuff happens later, you're like in, at that point.
Here's another fun thing. I just saw this, but a fun thing to consider is when you think of a camera shooting through doors, seeing action outside of the doors, that's a John Ford shot.
Okay, yeah.
People see that as John Ford shot. Alice Guy-Blache, and again, I forget the name of the movie, she's got the shot through a bunch of corridors with people coming through it. Like she invented the John Ford shot. That's amazing, was not right? John Ford that invented the John Ford shot.
I'll go back to it again, like I said earlier. She invented the close-up. The close-up.
Yeah, that's what amazing. The fuck? Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think down the line when we're gonna talk more about Alice Guy-Blache and her work. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna pitch the director. Maybe she can come on. Maybe
set us straight. Maybe she can watch this episode and go, "Yeah, you guys were wrong about a bunch of
idiots.
I took notes.
You guys are a bunch of idiots. Forget it. I don't care
and
how
if
much
you're
you
listening,
like the movie.
I'm sorry. I'm dumb. I keep saying that out loud, but I hope. But more or less, whether or not we're right or wrong, I just hope that people look into who she is and look into her movies that you're able to find, because she's the reason why we love what we love. Without her, none of this exists. What's your favorite movie? Well, that doesn't exist without her. And for that, I thank you, Alice, even though she's dead and she can't hear me.
Well, yeah. Well, me being Catholic, I guess I'll believe anything. I like to think that she's listening to us right now. But yeah, so for my final takeaway is I really love the documentary on a super professional level. I highly recommend this Be Natural, the Untold Story of Alice Guy-Blache, and definitely want to see more of her shorts. Bruce, you want to take us out? Final thoughts on Alice before we get out of here?
I can't restate anything more than what Eric said. She's essential just to have in your knowledge. You can go right now to YouTube or whatever other format you want to go to and look at her films. just go and look at her films, go look at the documentary. But right now you can go look at her films. And that's what I would say to do. Just get that knowledge in your brain.
Again, guys, check out our show notes. I'm going to leave the website where you can contact the filmmaker and donate, or most importantly, just see the film. And then this will get you down this rabbit hole of just her work and her life. I really, as soon as we're done, I'm going to guys tell you my film thing that I had. I had a film story that I had. I know, Eric, you think you always encourage me to write, but I was going to give you guys a little bit of a pitch. I'm not going to write the story or anything, but this was my little hook that I'm going to tell you guys down the road. But yeah, so Elise Guy-Blache, Eric, why don't you lead us out before we get out of here? Anything else you got to say?
Elise Guy-Blache, you created the thing that we love so much. The only reason we come together every week and talk. The only reason that cinematics exists and we made the friends we do. You're the start of the reason that brings us all together as a community. You're the reason that gave us something to empathize with and fear and laugh at and be joyful of. And all this was because you saw potential in a technology that everyone else ignored as a toy. And for doing that, you got pushed away and someone else took your credit. But I'm glad that you came to life, and I'm glad that you did what you did. And thank you for all you did, because without you, this world would be much darker.
Well said, Eric Holmes. Great choice. And of course, not to be flippant, the most important thing, we'll watch more of your films, Elise, more movies to come for us. And most of all, I don't think Bruce and Eric ever have to worry about this, but I know now from watching her films, this documentary, I'm going to try to be a lot more natural. See you guys later.